food safety issue. You were talking about Boar's Head, and they had issues in the plant that were just being ignored. Is it the same with cider? If you're not really paying attention to this, then that's potentially negligence.
Correct.
So, and if that led to some form of a malicious intent on the food company that led to a food safety problem, that led to potential injuries or deaths, all the way back. And I think that's an area that is completely under discussed.
Everyone, welcome back to the Bites and Bytes Podcast. I am your host, Kristin Demoranville. Today, we have an awesome guest, Rick Biros, the founder of Food Safety Tech and the Food Safety Consortium Conference. We will discuss how food safety and cybersecurity are more connected than you think. Also, we'll discuss some current news in food safety, and Rick has some fantastic insights, so you won't want to miss this episode. But before we get started, I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to all of you for your love and support over the past month. As many of you know, I recently lost my grandfather, my last living biological grandparent. Your kind words, messages, and calls have all meant so much to my family and me, and we are deeply grateful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. On a positive, before we get started with the show, a little bonus for you today. Make sure you listen all the way through and grab a special discount code for the Food Safety Consortium Conference. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Rick. Well, hi, Rick. Thanks for joining the show. I'm going to jump straight into it before you do your introduction. I would like to know what your favorite food is and your favorite food memory.
I don't know what my favorite food is because I like lots of food.
Do you have a food fixation at the minute?
No. Don't.
Okay.
I'm very blessed with my wife, my partner, who is an absolutely phenomenal cook. And I've been told many times that I'm just a very lucky man. I get really great meals 3 times a day. So favorite, there's some things that I like, but let's put it this way. Let's reverse this. There's very few things I don't like. That's what it comes down to. But you asked the second question, which was food experience. That I have an answer.
Okay.
Actually, my wife and I were traveling in Europe on business, and we were in Brussels, and we ended up going to a restaurant called Truffe de Noir.
Okay.
It was on the very northern part of the city, and a restaurant that had everything on the menu had truffles.
Ah.
The experience was unbelievable. Not only was the food good, but the experience itself was. We just happened to be served by the owner of the restaurant.
Love that.
And he explained everything to us. And he had both kinds of truffles. And even when we ordered a bottle of wine, we relied on his recommendation. But then he handled the wine, which I'd never seen before. I actually had no idea what he was doing, so I had to ask. And he explained pouring the wine from the bottle over the candle with the neck of the bottle being heated by the candle into a decanter does something extra to open up the wine and have it blossom. And boy, was he right.
Yeah.
Probably never spent that much money on a dinner, but
it's experience. You paid for the experience.
And we still talk about it to this day. It was really amazing.
Sounds amazing. Of course, you have to like truffles in order to appreciate this experience.
Yeah, but we even had truffles on ice cream.
I've heard that's good. I like caviar and coconut ice cream, which is a weird combo too. So
okay, so he on everything that he was served. Everything. He would have the truffles in his hand and a grater and would shave it on top of in addition to what was already cooked into it as well.
That's amazing.
It was an amazing experience.
That sounds so fun. So I love your memory. That's brilliant. And also, I think that we can say your favorite food is probably anything your wife makes. So that's probably, I feel like that's accurate.
We'll go with like 99%.
You have your bad days. Like I made a bad meal the other day. Thank you very much for that, Rick. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Rick Biros. I know Kristin through working with her on a conference that I run and I launched called the Food Safety Consortium. In addition to the Food Safety Consortium, we also publish a digital publishing platform called foodsafetytech.com, which is same type of articles in a traditional trade journal, but now done online. We distribute our content through weekly newsletters. I'm the content director, founder, publisher, chief bottle washer at Innovative Publishing, which is the parent company. Another platform called MedTech Intelligence, a colleague of mine runs. And we also have Cannabis Industry Journal.
And I am a subscriber to Food Safety Tech. So you know, Rick, I don't know if you ever knew that, but I am. It's actually really great, especially for those of us who are on the peripheral of the industry, because it's, current events, opinions, what's going on. It's actually you've done a brilliant job. I haven't found an article on there that I didn't find to be engaging. Maybe I haven't dug deep enough, but generally speaking, everything I've read has been great. You could tell that it's well curated and well loved. So thank you for that work. You mentioned the consortium, the Food Safety Consortium, which is actually coming up in October. I am a speaker, but we can get into that later. Why did you start this, Rick? Why did you decide to start a conference, to start a publication? Those are two things I don't think people wake up in the morning and think, I want to do that, because it's a lot of work and you do a great job. I'm not saying that the conference isn't wonderful and I just obviously raved about your publication, but why? What led you to that?
I guess for many things, there's some sort of stimulant or something that got it started and then things snowball. So actually, the legacy goes back well beyond even the launch of Food Safety Tech. A long time ago, very early in my career, what made the headlines was the E. coli outbreak in the Pacific Northwest, specific to Box. The year was 1993, and I, at the time, was working on a trade publication as the national sales manager. The trade publication was called Food Engineering. And I don't know why, but just this Jack-in-the-Box thing broke out and just caught my interest.
Yeah. And it was awful. So I could see why.
4 children died. And interestingly enough, not all of them actually ingested E. coli tainted hamburger.
Yeah, they were with other kids. Yeah.
So I just started investigating it. And I started investigating it I was working for a company that, again, was Food Engineering. And I thought this could be a publication that could be, because we're looking into the idea of a food safety or food quality publication that could be published alongside Food Engineering. And I did a lot of research on it, came up with business plan, ready to present it to my boss. I told him about it conceptually. He thought it was a dumb idea.
Jeez.
And never even entertained the business plan. So I was disappointed, to say the least. And I ended up just having this idea, ended up leaving my job, getting a little bit of seed capital from a relative and mortgaging the house, and started a company based on a launch of a magazine called Food Quality. I did that for 12 years. 13 years. Built it up. It was a print magazine. We ended up doing 2 other print magazines and ended up selling the products to John Wiley & Sons. Working there for 2 years. I decided working in a big corporate environment was not really for me.
Understand that.
Right? I think it fits for some people. It just didn't. And decided to leave and left in 2009 at the height of a recession with a non-compete.
Oh, boy.
And also feeling that print was dead and we needed to come up with a new platform. So we also, when I had Food Quality Magazine, I had pharmaceutical formulation quality. So I learned about the FDA regulations from not only food, but also pharma. Couldn't do anything in that market either. So decided to launch MedTech Intelligence, which was for the medical device industry, focused on regulatory compliance. It took 2 years to really perfect the business model. And during that period, I got introduced to somebody and we decided to launch some conferences allied to it. So after 2 years, my non-compete was up. So I took the business model that we had developed in MedTech and applied that back to truly my roots in my career had been all within the food processing publishing industry. So I took what I learned there and we still published MedTech Intelligence, but then got back into the industry that I know and I love, people that I've, we're working with Food Quality now. I was now working with Food Safety Tech. that also is why the Food Safety Consortium was an extension of publishing efforts.
That is, I didn't actually know the whole story, so I really appreciate that. Now I have even more respect because you had to be patient too and kind of wait for some things to get together, and you had to fundraise. I mean, I'm sure you're still fundraising, but entrepreneurs, we never stop. But that's amazing. And I don't really know if people know that story when they go to the consortium, obviously, because they just go and they listen to the talks and they do their things and they network.
There's just, there's a lot of legacy. Talking to Mark Carter, who's the president of IDFP, and Mark and I go back almost 30 years as friends. He's doing a webinar with me, but also potentially speaking at the consortium. But, Mark and I have known each other for years, and I could rattle off a bunch of other people that just through the course of 30 years, and it's a really great industry.
It really is. I went to my first consortium 3 years ago, I think it was now, Rick. I think we've known each other for about 3 years.
Yep.
And I have never felt more seen by an industry that was not my industry. I mean, accepted immediately. I didn't even think about it. They didn't think about it. I was just immediately sit down, talk to us. And I would just fell in love with the group of people. And now I'm friends with most of them. So it's really this great community, like you said, that just comes together and wants to do the right thing. And it's so... And the reason why it's such a good conference too is it's the candor that can come from it. Everybody speaks freely. There's really not a lot of fear in that. Obviously, the government agents, they take their beat, which is fine. But I was never at a conference where people just kind of like raised their hand and spoke and just said what they wanted to say in the crowd. And that, I kind of went back to the security community and I thought, wow, we should really be doing that more, right? So we should be speaking our minds, but we play politics a lot, so that's hard. But I just want you to know, I love that you've cultivated this networking, inclusive group that gets together and is able to actually share problems and find actual solutions. I was watching solutions being presented in real time. It was really wonderful to see that. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen this year as well, since we've got a lot to talk about with Boar's Head and speaking of disasters and a few other things, and all the new regulations that are supposedly coming out and all these other fun things. I wanted to ask, because you got me thinking while you were talking, what is your most memorable moment from the publication and also the consortium? So you keep that in your head whenever you think about it.
On the publishing side, actually within food quality, I ended up leading a project a long time ago, but it was really kind of one of those events in your career that you really look back on fondly of. So come the time, the technology of ATP environmental monitoring really been just introduced. There was a lot of confusion in the industry on what it does. Some people in the industry thought it was actually a replacement to traditional microbiology or definitive results. I ended up leading a project that had readers of our magazine do demo tests actually and use an instrument in their plant for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we put together an evaluation form for them to fill out, and they were able to demo. I think there was 6 or 7 different companies that participated, providing each of our testers with an instrument and the supplies needed and instructions on how to use it. And then we compiled all this data into a research project that turned into an article.
Okay.
In addition to this, it was a pretty serious topic, and in order to just also have a little bit of fun with it, see, ATP is the same technology or the same chemical process that takes place in the firefly's butt.
Oh.
It's that. Right?
Excellent.
So when there's presence of protein from a swab, and then you connect that with the test, it glows like fire. We ended up hiring a cartoonist who did these personified fireflies flying around with swabs and quality control, hairnets and things like that on them with the names of the different instruments manufacturers on their back or something like that. And
that's brilliant.
Really cute. It was a lot of fun. And, so when we did that and that article came out, it really made a massive impact in the industry. And we were hearing about that article 5 years later. So there were companies that requested permission to use the artwork that we contracted with for their marketing purposes, and we're using it 10 years later. So
that's amazing.
Experience. Within the consortium, there's a lot of micro experiences basically it's feedback from attendees. To your point, I heard back from somebody who I guess was kind of a mid-level person, possibly a shy person.
Okay.
And she said to me that she doesn't like public speaking. She doesn't like crowds. But the way I handled questions and answers of speakers, even like senior level FDA people, she said I took the intimidation out. And she got comfortable enough to stand in front of a group of people and ask a question. So she got a tremendous amount of value out of our conference. But she told me that the way we ran it and the way I didn't even, it wasn't the intent. I didn't think of this as just like kind of who I am. Much more casual, conversive versus stiff and sticking to a script. And she just felt so comfortable she was able to get very engaged with the conference and got a lot out. So things like that.
That's great. That's good feedback, actually. That's really great feedback.
Exhibitor who told me that they exhibit at many larger conferences or trade shows, 10 times the size of the audience that we had. But he said that he got so much value out of ours because it's a smaller, more intimate type of setting for even exhibitors that are really just tabletops in front of the meeting room. And he walked away with 21 set appointments from mid to senior level executives.
Good for him.
That we get maybe a lot more leads from, say, a bigger show, but not the quality of the follow-up meetings. Like usually, follow up, but I actually have appointments with 21 spread out over the next 3 weeks.
Wow, that's great.
He said that already is a great ROI. So from both an attendee standpoint, exhibitor standpoint, we just get good feedback and get a lot of that, and that's why I call them kind of these micro experiences.
That's awesome. How many years has it been running now?
It's 12, coming up to its, this year will be its 13th.
Oh, so you got a teenager.
Yeah.
You got a teenager now. Wow.
Thanks for reminding me.
No problem. I'm here for all the weird information.
Having lived through 4 teenagers.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
There were 3 years of COVID, too.
Yeah, you converted to online for that, didn't you?
The first year was good. The second year, I think people were kind of burnt out with everything being...
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I can totally get that.
Plus, the industry went through some weird times with structuring.
Yeah.
Chain, trying to do audits virtually and not sure about that. Reduction in enforcement from FDA.
Reduction in labor, too. We lost a lot of people as well. And I mean, not because of COVID specifically, but a lot of people lost their jobs. Yeah, that was a weird time.
Very, very disruptive.
Yeah.
And everyone related to it.
I don't think a lot of people even realize how much the food supply chain got rocked during the COVID times. I don't really feel like there's really no great way to illustrate it other than we realized how broken it was, I guess, is probably the good thing that came out of it. And now we're trying to claw our way back.
And not position flexibility.
Correct. It was not agile at all.
Hey listeners, a quick break from my conversation with Rick. The Bites and Bytes podcast is officially 1 year old. It's been a fantastic year, and again, thank you to all of the OG listeners and the new listeners for joining me on this journey. I'm excited about the next chapter of the podcast, and I can't wait to bring you along. Also, I want to take a moment and send a massive thank you to all of you who voted for the Bites and Bytes podcast and the technology category for the Women in Podcasting Network Awards of 2024. Woohoo! Seriously, your support means the world to me, and I'm so grateful. The winners will be announced at the end of October, so stay tuned. Fingers crossed, and thank you again for being such amazing listeners. Now back to my conversation.
I'd like to say that there's been improvements since then, but we still are very rigid. And I think some of the things that have recently happened in the news, aka Boar's Head, has kind of reminded us that we need to, pivot a little bit better and create cultures where people can say things. Because obviously the reason why nothing happened there was because people didn't feel comfortable enough to say anything. I'm guessing there was just a really bad culture in that plant. Now, this is me speculating. I'm not going any further, but that's why I think it's so important for events like this to be the way they are, Rick, because it needs to have that kind of culture vibe where people can feel accepted and okay to talk about problems that are going on in their facilities in an open, transparent way, with respect, of course, to like NDAs, without fear or ridicule or shame for, oh, you had that problem? You're obviously a loser. That I've never felt that way standing at the conference because, well, first of all, I mean, I'm the outlier, either the or, one of two that is from the cybersecurity world. I get excited when I see another cybersecurity person. I'm like, look, hi, it's just one of those things. Anyways, but I wanted to ask who attends the conference? Like, what's the demographic for attendance? Like, what kind of jobs do they have? And I'm saying this because I want my cybersecurity side of the listener house to hear this because you're included. So,
well, the primary persona of a person attending is going to be a mid to senior level food safety and quality assurance executive. These people are not learning food safety 101. They're not looking at very entry-level type of training. This is more for senior-level folks coming for information on food policy, what's going on in Washington, degree of new technology that's introduced, certainly regulatory compliance issues and best practices, learning them. And sometimes it's just good to hear and share experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
Technically learn anything new. It either helps a person understand that they're not experiencing something unique and that many other people are experiencing those challenges, or that they're actually be doing better.
You did roundtables last year, and I sat on a couple, and I've learned so much just from listening to people tell me their stories about what happened to their company. Or, I mean, it's China Mouse rules. We're not all going to be like, oh, this company's, blah, it doesn't matter. But the fact that people were able to really be candid with me and saying, I don't understand technology. I know I work with it, but like, what's the bad stuff? And it was that nice moment of, we need to do more of that, as an industry, specifically both the food and the cybersecurity side of the house. And I love that you facilitate that. I thought that was one of the best parts, personally. I still think, and then obviously the hallway chatter, because I can't go 5 feet without having a conversation or getting involved in something. And then, there's so many characters in the food industry. I mean, we know so many people that just are bigger than life personalities and really make it so much more enjoyable. It takes the drudgery of the roles that we do out a little bit, which is really helpful, because sometimes we really hear some really sad, nasty stuff. Like, we really do. And it can be really draining at times. I'm sure this year will be rough at talking about everything. Listeria is a nasty thing. I can't believe we're still dealing with it, truthfully. You mentioned technology, and I love that one of your favorite memories from the publishing is a technology rise, essentially.
Right.
So you've been doing this for 13 years, Rick, right? And obviously you've had a food career before that. Technology is all of a sudden sort of, I think, in the last decade, really just taken off in the food industry. It's gone all kinds of directions. I was listening to some podcasts this morning about the agricultural side, and they've got tech that's crazy. I was like, excuse me, what? Now we've got this to deal with? But how do you see it going? Because we've got a lot of really big issues that are coming up that I think only technology is going to be able to really solve. And we're still not solving the problem of, the ransomware attacks that are happening in the industry, and the other types of cyber attacks, and the insider threats, and all the other issues that go along with food safety in terms of the digital physical world. Just curious what your thoughts are, like the last 13 years, how that's looked.
When we first started doing the consortium, we actually had gentleman from the Division of Homeland Security at request to speak at the consortium. And the topic was on food defense. It was really more about insider threats, almost like a disgruntled employee.
Yeah, insider threats, yeah.
Now it's about cybersecurity attacks. And how does things like cybersecurity actually translate into issues of food safety? Really comes down to is that the mid and larger size food companies becoming more dependent on technology. I mean, the reality of it is this business is a high volume, low margin business.
That's right.
Squeeze a little bit more on the margin because it's so high volume that has an impact. In addition to that, from a regulatory compliance issues, you're having things like FSMA 204, which is a traceability issue. You can't do that in any quick time without really utilizing utilizing technology.
Actually, the new FSMA guidelines actually have clauses in there talking about how there has to be cybersecurity protocols around your food safety protocols in terms of tech.
Sure.
So I was like, hello, does anybody know this? Now all the listeners do, but that's not something that's been broadcast in cybersecurity world.
Well, it actually, nor has it really been broadcast in the industry that much.
Yeah.
There's been a little bit of a disconnect, in my opinion, on, some of the conferences, ours, as well as other ones out there, have had the topic of cybersecurity.
Uh-huh.
And, this one presentation that I sat in on was talking about changing your passwords. I'm like, really?
Yeah, God.
Don't open up suspect-looking emails. I mean, that goes without saying. Anybody with a Gmail account should know better.
Yeah, you still have to say it, though, and I hate that we have to say it because I think that people just think cybersecurity is strong passwords, two-factor authentication, don't share your passwords, just good hygiene in general. It has to be said because people still use the same password for their Gmail as they do for their email at work. Until we fix the human problem, it has to be said. However, I don't enjoy saying it. I hate saying it because I feel like you said, people should know this. They should know better. We teach it to elementary school kids. Come on, but it is what it is.
I think the opportunity lies with probably coming from the cybersecurity world into actually explaining to the food companies what the threats are.
Yeah, and I agree.
There's threats to food companies that from cyber attack that are not related to food safety. There's hold them for ransom, ship anything. We've got your customer database. We got this, we got that. But actually, what I think would be helpful is more and more examples, potential food safety and quality issues that could happen as a result of a cyber attack. So I learned about this one company that had programmable logic controllers.
PLCs. Mm-hmm.
Their patches and fixes were available on the internet with no password. Completely unsecure website for a major company that was supplying this. So what if that was hacked? What if that was even replaced? What if that website, it could cause, by having all the valves controlled differently than they should be, could wreak major havoc and potentially cause a food safety threat without some companies even know. I think that would be those topics of cited examples of a cyber attack on a company and specifically how that relates to safety and quality would be important, and also the financial impact to that food company from they couldn't even be viewed as liable for this because they didn't put enough safety measures in to prevent that from happening.
Before we jump back in, I wanted to let you know where you can catch me live this October. I'll be speaking at the Food Safety Consortium on Monday, October 21st, followed by the ICS conference in Atlanta from October 22nd to 24th. You won't want to miss my talk at that conference on Thursday, October 24th. After that, I'm heading to Montreal for the InCyber conference from October 28th through 30th, where I'll be on a fantastic panel with some of our previous podcast guests. All the details will be in the show notes. Now, I've got an exciting deal for you. Rick has been incredibly generous and offered a discount code to the Food Safety Consortium. Use the code RickyB at checkout to get $200 off your ticket. That's RICKYB. Huge thanks to Rick for making this available to all the listeners. The Food Safety Consortium from October 19th to 22nd. The link to register will be in the show notes, and you can find out more details at foodsafetyconsortium.org.
It's all like a regular food safety issue. We talk about Boar's Head, and they had issues in the plant that were just being ignored. Is it the same with cyber? If you're not really paying attention to this, then that's potentially negligence.
Correct.
So, and if that led to some form of a malicious intent on the food company that led to a food safety problem, that led to potential injuries or deaths all the way back. And I think that's an area that is completely under discussed.
Correct. And it should be, especially since chief information security officers are being held accountable for tax now. It does a food safety CISO or CISA, however you want to say it. Do they want to take full responsibility for a foodborne illness off a production line that came from a cyber attack? No. Of course not. But would that motivate them to make sure that all the protocols were covered and we're constantly monitoring and being prepared and being resilient rather than just be recovering? Yeah. So I see the good and the bad with it. It's a slippery slope too, Rick, because there's not enough people that understand the system. You know what I mean? The system of food and the system of how technology and food are together. You know as well as I do in these facilities, it's a production uptime and employee safety, and that's all anybody cares about. Obviously, food safety is included in that conversation, but it's that constant movement. We got to be agile. We got to go. And if it gets in the way, they don't want to deal with it. So the idea, and I know that this is where I've sat down and I had some really awesome conversations at the conference and beyond, realizing that food defense and food safety and security have to work with business mindsets of how do we incorporate us into their bottom line, if you will, their production uptime and their employee safety, and creating that food safety culture to grab the whole, trifecta of buzzy words. But cybersecurity is part of that now. And again, I just go back to, it just makes complete logical sense to me. It's like a no-brainer. Like, of course we're involved in that now. Like, of course we are. Yeah. But because the focus is always so heavily on the tech, people forget about all of the social engineering around it, all of the other little things that could happen, how it's a domino effect. You've already displayed that very well in what you just said. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. And I think we've got a lot of ways to figure out how to work together and collaborate. I am very grateful that the food teams generally are very accepting of us. I do get a lot of conversations about how do I talk to cybersecurity and technology in my own company because they're not you. You're nice. I could talk to you. That's what I get. And I'm like, I said, you're a food company, right? They're like, yeah. And I said, just bring them some food. Start with a peace offering. I mean, when I was in food production, there was always food around. So, I mean, there's always in the break rooms and stuff, depending on what it is. I mean, obviously, you're not going to want like a can of soup, but if you have like a bakery company, just bring whatever you're making there. Sure. I also said, a lot of it comes down to they're very busy. They feel like they're on fire all the time, too. So if you can find ways to work with them, come up ideas that would help them alleviate their stress, then do it. It's kind of reciprocal in that regard. I do know some really great programs that some of the food companies are doing well in terms of cybersecurity, but I still haven't seen the true partnership between food safety and incorporation to food safety culture. It's definitely talked about more now. People are definitely paying attention. I know over the last 3 years that I've been attending, it's definitely been more of a topic of conversation. And I think I've spoken in every one since I've been there, and I will continue because it constantly needs to be repeated. But you're right. I think we need more scenario-based conversations. I think that's really important to talk about it like that because people only understand if you can tell a story, that's a different conversation, right? You know this from being in publishing. If you can tell it in a way that makes people remember, it might cause reaction rather than, oh, that's not my job. And I hope that's not what happened at Boar's Head either. Because yikes.
We're actually introduced a last-minute new session for the consortium specifically on this. The original session was on root cause analysis. The presenter, and it's changing around, but what she's doing is researching the USDA record. There's not everything that's going to be available to her by October 21st, but what is available publicly, they're going to be looking at, reviewing, and discussing, and how for attendees to potentially, avoid those problems. How did this happen? Was this a sort of a bystander effect?
Probably.
Everyone thought in the plant, well, someone must be dealing with it. So that no one actually raised the flag, the red flag, and say this is a problem. They'll say it's something else. Yeah. At the same time, USDA had they brought this up. They're in the plant, they're seeing this. They brought up concerns about this, but if it wasn't being addressed, why didn't they just pull their inspectors? Why did they shut down the plant?
Yeah, there seems like it's a series of unfortunate events that just kind of really went sideways. Yep. I mean, this is as bad as the Peanut Corporation of America, but granted, that was a different situation.
Yep.
That was malicious. This is so far not malicious, thankfully.
But
that story is rough.
But we don't know all the facts. To your point, though, was a food safety culture one that prevented people from speaking up. So therefore, one could construe that as being malicious.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly,
that's true.
Marler must be representing one or more.
Yeah, he is he's put out some really powerful posts on LinkedIn, actually. I'll link a few into the show notes for the listeners, but he's definitely made me go, whoa, this is a really bad situation beyond it was already bad because people had lost their lives and have major complications beyond that. But the fact that, I was speaking about this on a podcast this morning, that the community was really ultimately affected heavily in that area of Virginia. They laid off 500 people. That's in a rural part of Virginia. That's 500 people in the workforce. That's not good. Like that's really bad. And it's not like they got severance. The plant got closed. Like it's not going to be, this is scary.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
People didn't have to die. People didn't have to get sick, and people didn't have to lose their jobs.
Unfortunately, someone's going to have to answer for it. And the brand is tarnished big time. I mean, it's being made fun of in the media. I saw Boar's Head hummus the other day, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, I won't touch anything from them right now because I don't know what their other facilities are like. That's what I thought in my head. And I'm in the quote no, but what about people who don't know? That's what's really concerning, because
this is now an opportunity for Boar's Head to really try and grab hold of the situation. There are times where really bad things happen at It really depends on how the food company, specifically the food company management, supports food safety and quality assurance people on how to address this.
Yeah.
So, actually in Virginia, Sabra dipping sauce had 2 big outbreaks years ago. Director of Food Safety is Rob Mamos, and Rob actually spoke at the consortium, and it was interesting, he had his corporate attorney sitting next to him, and usually those are the ones that tell you to shut up, don't say anything. You can't do this, you can only do that. By advice of our counsel, I emerged refraining from comment. No, they both just put everything out on the table and discussed how bad they screwed up and what they were doing about what they did to fix it. They were an open book, and people. I heard back. This is probably one of those moments where I heard back that someone just could not believe how open and honest and genuine they were.
That's rare, because normally it's shame and hiding.
Oh, yeah. So, but that is the community that's coming out to the conferences are like that.
Yes, I would agree.
This is really an opportunity of Boar's Head to say, hey, okay, we're taking ownerships. We messed up. Here's what we've learned. Here's what we're doing going forward. I mean, they might be forced into this. This thing could be dragging out for a long time. They could be, the CEO dragged in front of Congress.
Oh, he probably will be. That's probably already, it's going to happen.
With problems that they had, and it took the door blowing off.
Yeah.
The point is that it ultimately comes down to corporate integrity, which is a component of food safety culture.
Agreed.
So again, you go back to your point. We're speculating because we don't know right now. But was the culture one in which you should not speak up?
Yeah, I mean, we could speculate because that's what makes sense ultimately. Otherwise, it's just malicious intent at that point, and everyone's accountable. I'm sure none of those people feel good about what's going on. I mean,
of course not.
It's gotta feel like crap.
Trying to get away with something or not?
Well, I guess we're gonna find out.
But I think a lot's going to come out, and there's still a lot going to come out over time. This topic is not going to go away, and there are certain companies that unfortunately have their name associated with certain outbreaks. But that industry, the industry of fast food hamburgers, really work together, because when there's E. coli in one brand, sales of hamburgers go down across all the brands.
It's true, and that's when they put the regulation for the temperature for meat, which they should have done a long time ago. But I mean, it became
so it's a
law.
So again, this is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
I haven't seen something like this to this degree in a while, and I don't think it's going to go away.
It's such there's so many things we could say about it, obviously, personally, professionally, the whole thing.
Hi everyone, this is Kristin from the future. Before we continue, I wanted to provide an update since we recorded this episode. There's been significant news about the Boar's Head incident we discussed within this podcast. Boar's Head has now appointed Frank Yanis, the former Deputy Commissioner of Food Policy and Response at the US FDA, as their new Chief Food Safety Advisor. According to the recent article from Food Safety Tech, in this leadership role, Frank will be responsible for ensuring top-tier food safety and quality across the entire organization. He'll also lead a nationwide search for a Chief Food Safety Officer to succeed him. In addition to his advisory role, Frank will chair the Boar's Head Food Safety Advisory Council. This council includes independent, industry-leading food safety experts who will help guide the company in adopting enhanced food safety programs. If you're interested in hearing more from Frank, he will also be speaking at the Food Safety Consortium this year, where he'll be covering the topics of listeria and food processing environments. So stay tuned for what's sure to be a very insightful session. Now back to my chat with Rick.
But I do remember, and I'm sure you saw it, they did post for the new head of food quality for Borsad. And I was like, yeah, is it too soon? They obviously need the help. But I thought, wow, whoever takes that role better have thick skin and...
Some of the heroes.
They will be.
The late David Thino was the one who stepped in for Jack and Bugs. And he built a legacy. It's really, for someone who is a go-getter, that's a phenomenal opportunity, and maybe one that should be honored, to come in and fix a system that's broke.
That'd be one hell of a speaker if you could get them next year. You should totally, everybody needs to figure out who it is quickly and get that conversation going.
But there are those in the industry that are like...
Yeah, and I think that there's so many unsung heroes that are in the food safety space anyways. It's a privilege to stand around these people because you know that they have prevented massive disasters. And I think that's why I gravitate towards the food industry more than I have in any other industries, because it's not just about safeguarding data, it's about safeguarding lives. And you can always feel good about waking up in the morning for that reason. And not that I'm saying anybody who just worries about data doesn't have a reason to get up, but that extra little good of humanity and the good of the planet, that feels really good. Sure. It helps you charge up the hill a little bit faster. I really appreciate this, Rick, because first of all, I've learned a lot. So thank you very much. I always love when I learn things on the podcast. I want to close out with, what are your top few things that you think are very misunderstood in the food safety side? Because I have a lot of listeners that are in the operational technology space, cybersecurity, IT. I got a whole gamut of people who listen. But what do you want people to know that they're misunderstanding, especially since you write a publication, because you hear this and you know this?
Food safety is not a cost.
Yeah,
it should be looked at as a profit center. If done right, maybe it more floats to the top of either food protection and quality, or its line item in most P&Ls are expense and not necessarily an investment or protection.
And for all the cybersecurity IT listeners out there, is that ring true for you? Do you hear that all the time in your industry? Because we are definitely considered a cost center because we are expensive. There's so many similarities between food safety teams and cybersecurity and IT teams. It's ridiculous to me now. We are all going through the same stuff, in different ways, of course, but it's such a similar. So I'm so glad you said that, Rick, because I'm yeah, it should absolutely be. It's more of insurance, really, in my mind. That's how I see it. If it's not there, bad stuff's going to happen, and it's just part of business. And I really wish we'd stop this whole cost center versus profit, that kind of vibe in corporate, because it creates those silos even more. And we need to cut through that crap inside of the food industry because it's not helping anybody. Ultimately, I think collaboration, as we've said throughout most of this episode, is really key to success and keeping food safe and people healthy. So yeah, that's a good one. It's not a good one, but it's...
And I think the other thing is going to be the supporting the industry with investing in technology. The whole aspect of data analytic is already on a very rapid rise, only going to continue. And we're seeing more and more companies coming into this space that are vendors of technology. We're seeing companies that have been in the space with technologies such as testing equipment or labs that have introduced analytics as taking the data from these laboratory tests, putting it into a usable format to use now and form intelligence. And I think, again, that kind of relates back to then maybe potentially understanding food safety could be one profit center with the data to support it.
Yeah, actually, that's a fair shout out. What can you do with the data you get out of things? Could that be a profit thing? Or could it be something that could be used in other places in the business? I can use that as an example with a lot of the cybersecurity tech that's out there that's monitoring and doing all these things. We might be able to tell if there's been a contamination detected on the line before any of the food safety equipment does, because we're watching the sensors differently. So we'll see a tampering in a different place. Or Therefore, we'll be able to tell if somebody's corrupted on one side from unauthorized entry, which the food safety technology wouldn't necessarily tell you. That's why it's a combined forces moment. This is why I tell people, make sure you check each other's audits. Like, it's important. I do think we'll see that potentially coming into play at some point. At least, God, I hope. Because it's such great data. And then if you feed it through any type of machine learning, AI, I know everybody just cringed, but it's true. You have a different outlook on it as well, because we can't think of everything. Neither can the AI, but we can't either. So it's just more data, the better, right? As I always say, if you can have it, it's good. So that's actually a really fair shout out. And this is why I'm going to say what I say. And I constantly say it all the time, Rick. I love that we're bringing more tech into the industry, but when people say tech, I want people to also think cybersecurity. The software may not be made securely necessarily. Sure. And they may expect you to be the ones that are responsible for the security. Are you going to be responsible for the security? Or are you just going to buy it and then throw it at your team and expect them to secure it when they don't even understand what it is or what it does? There needs to be more conversation there. So I love that everybody wants to bring tech in, but please just partner with people that can do it, because otherwise you're going to have a whole new attack vector that could just create all these awful scenarios that I will explain to you if you come and listen to my talk at the consortium. It's so bad. We're a good friend of mine says we're right of boom all the time. We really are sometimes. Just right of boom. Thanks, Rick. I really appreciate this. This is awesome. And I really do hope that people think about coming over to see the consortium. It's actually going to be in Crystal City, Virginia this year, right?
Yeah, it's Crystal Gateway Marriott in Farmington, Virginia, October 19th through 22nd. Mm-hmm. We will be there again next year, right about the same time as well. You join us this year, please join us next year. We do have on foodsafetytech.com, there is a subscription link to our newsletter, which is free. Mm-hmm. All that information that we've been talking about is available in your inbox pretty much a week. And the information about our conference is also...
I would encourage anyone who's listening, if you want to know more about the food industry, this is a great publication to read about, because it does cover the gambit. It gives you enough information to kind of get you excited about things and want to do more research. It definitely started me down my path years and years ago, for sure. I still reference it, Rick, when I do talks. So, where else am I going to find these resources that's actually talking about real problems and what's going on rather than the news? I don't necessarily want the news. I want people to think about it and talk about it. And that's what I appreciate about what you do.
Well, appreciate that. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. You make it very easy to just talk. Which is to your credit.
That's the idea. And thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
And that's a wrap, everyone. Huge thanks to our guest Rick for sharing his wisdom with us today. And of course, a big thank you to all of you for tuning in. The show notes will have all the links to our topics and information about the Food Safety Consortium. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to comment, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Your support keeps me going, and happy 1 year to us all. Yeah! Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.